r/AITA friend called CPS on my kids, so I exposed their dark secret. The knock on my door at 7:43 a.m. wasn't the gentle tap of a neighbor asking for sugar. It was the authoritative, measured rhythm that immediately made my stomach drop and my coffee mug freeze halfway to my lips. Ms. Chen? I'm Linda Morrison with Child Protective Services. This is my colleague, David Park. We need to speak with you about a report we've received concerning your children. The words hit me like a physical blow. Behind me, I could hear 8-year-old Emma's cartoon playing in the living room and 5-year-old Tyler asking her to pass the cereal. Normal morning sounds that suddenly felt fragile, like they could shatter at any moment. I'm sorry, what? My voice came out smaller than I intended. A report about what? The woman, Linda, was already looking past me into my home, her trained eyes cataloging everything. The breakfast dishes on the counter, Tyler's backpack by the door, the pile of clean laundry I'd folded last night still sitting on the dining room table waiting to be put away. We've received allegations of neglect, she said, her tone professional but not unkind. Specifically, reports that the children are frequently left unsupervised, that there's insufficient food in the home, and concerns about their general welfare and hygiene. My mouth opened and closed like a fish. That's completely untrue. Who would say that? Who called you? The identity of the reporter is confidential, but we're required to investigate all allegations. May we come in? It wasn't really a question. They were already stepping forward, and I found myself backing up, my mind reeling. Neglect? Insufficient food? I worked 2 jobs to make sure my kids never went without. Tyler had literally just asked Emma to pass him more cereal from a pantry I'd stocked 3 days ago at the grocery store. Mommy? Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas but clean ones, her hair neatly braided from last night. Who are these people? I watched Linda's eyes sweep over my daughter, taking in her appearance, her demeanor, the way she stood close to me but not fearfully cowering. David was already moving through my living room, and I felt violated watching him examine my home like it was a crime scene. These are some people who need to ask us a few questions, sweetheart. Can you go help Tyler finish his breakfast? But Emma, too smart for her own good sometimes, was already picking up on the tension. Are we in trouble? The question broke something in my chest. My kids, who had never known anything but love and security from me, were about to be thrust into a nightmare because someone had lied. Someone had picked up a phone and deliberately tried to destroy our lives with false accusations. Ma'am, we'll need to speak with both children, David said, pulling out a tablet. And we'll need to document the living conditions, check the refrigerator and pantry, examine the children's sleeping areas. As they began their invasion, because that's what it felt like, an invasion, one face kept flashing in my mind. Jessica Martinez from next door, who had stood in my kitchen just 3 days ago with tears in her eyes, asking if I could loan her $1,500 for her car payment. The 3rd time in 2 months she'd asked for money I simply didn't have to give. The same Jessica who had stormed out when I gently explained that I was already stretched thin, who had turned at my door and said, you know, Sarah, some of us actually care about being good mothers. I was starting to understand exactly what she'd meant by that. The next 2 hours felt like being dissected while fully conscious. Linda and David moved through my home with clinical efficiency, photographing everything, measuring the contents of my refrigerator with the same precision you'd use to solve a murder case. They documented the healthy food I'd just bought, the clean dishes, the organized toy bins I'd stayed up until midnight arranging because I was obsessive about keeping our small space tidy. Emma, sweetie, can you tell me about your morning routine? Linda asked my daughter, who was now sitting ramrod straight on our couch, still in her pajamas but clearly trying to be on her best behavior. Mommy wakes us up at 7, Emma recited, her voice smaller than usual. We brush our teeth, get dressed, eat breakfast. Then I help Tyler with his shoes because he's still learning the bunny ears way. And what do you usually have for breakfast? Cereal or oatmeal or sometimes pancakes on weekends. Orange juice. Mommy always asks if we want fruit. Emma's eyes darted to me. Are we answering wrong? My heart shattered. No, baby. You're doing perfect. But even as I said it, I could see how this looked through their lens. How every answer was being filtered through suspicion, every detail examined for cracks that might support whoever had called them. David emerged from the bedrooms with his tablet full of photos. The children's rooms appear clean and organized. Adequate bedding, clothes in the dressers appear clean and size appropriate. He paused, consulting his notes. Though the report mentioned frequent absences from school? Absences? I stood up too quickly, anger flaring. Emma has missed exactly 3 days this year, once for a stomach bug and twice for a family emergency when my mother was in the hospital. I had the documentation. I always call the school, always follow protocol. Linda made a note. Something about my defensive tone, probably. Everything I said or did was being catalogued as potential evidence of, what? Caring too much? Not caring enough? Tyler wandered over, still clutching his stuffed elephant, completely oblivious to the fact that his world was potentially crumbling around him. Mama, can I have more juice? Of course, buddy. I moved toward the kitchen, but David was already there, watching me pour the orange juice like it might reveal some dark truth about my parenting. The report also mentioned concerns about supervision after school, Linda continued. Who watches the children when you're working? Mrs. Peterson from down the hall babysits until I get home. She's been watching kids in this building for 15 years, has references, does everything by the book. I handed Tyler his juice, my hand steadier than I felt. She should be home now if you want to verify. But I was already thinking about how this would sound to Mrs. Peterson, how the whole building would know by evening that CPS had been at my door. How Emma would go to school tomorrow knowing that strangers had photographed her bedroom and questioned whether her mother took proper care of her. We'll need to speak with her, yes. And your employer, to verify your work schedule. Linda's pen kept moving across her notepad. The report suggests the children are often left alone for extended periods. That's a lie. The words came out harsher than I intended, and I watched both investigators' attention sharpen. I'm never gone longer than 8 hours, and they're never alone. Never. As I said it, I caught a glimpse through my kitchen window of Jessica's apartment across the courtyard. Her blinds were cracked open just enough for someone to peer out, and I could swear I saw a shadow move away from the window. She was watching. Watching the destruction she'd set in motion with what I was now certain had been a deliberately false report. The realization hit me like ice water. This was just the beginning. The investigation dragged on for another hour, each minute feeling like a slow torture designed to strip away every shred of dignity I had left. When Linda and David finally packed up their tablets and cameras, the damage felt irreversible. "We'll be conducting interviews over the next few days," Linda explained, handing me a business card that felt like a death sentence. "Your children's teachers, the babysitter, your employers. Standard procedure. Standard procedure." As if there was anything standard about having your life dissected by strangers because someone decided to weaponize the system against you. "What happens now?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "We have 30 days to complete our investigation. In the meantime, the children remain in your care, but we may conduct additional home visits without notice." David's tone was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather instead of my family's future. "Any changes to your living situation or childcare arrangements need to be reported immediately." After they left, I sat on my couch staring at the business card, Emma curled up next to me and Tyler building blocks on the floor. The apartment felt contaminated somehow, like their presence had left invisible fingerprints on everything we touched. "Mommy?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Are they going to take us away?" The question I'd been dreading. "No, sweetheart. Nobody's taking you anywhere. This is just a misunderstanding that we have to clear up." But even as I said it, I knew how hollow it sounded. Because the truth was, I didn't know. I'd heard horror stories about CPS investigations that spiraled out of control, about children removed from loving homes based on lies and bureaucratic incompetence. My phone buzzed with a text from my boss at the diner. "Heard some officials were asking questions about you. Everything okay?" My stomach dropped. They'd already started the interviews. By tomorrow, everyone I worked with would know I was under investigation. In a small town like ours, that kind of news traveled faster than wildfire. Another text, this one from Mrs. Peterson. "Dear, some people came by asking about the children. I told them nothing but good things, but I thought you should know." I closed my eyes, trying to push down the panic rising in my throat. This was really happening. My reputation, my job security, my children's sense of safety, all of it was crumbling because of one vindictive phone call. That's when I saw Jessica. She was walking across the courtyard with her usual confident stride, designer purse slung over her shoulder, not a care in the world. When she spotted me through the window, she had the audacity to wave, her expression a mask of fake concern. The rage that shot through me was white-hot and dangerous. I knew things about Jessica that could destroy her life just as thoroughly as she was trying to destroy mine. The affair she'd been having with Marcus Wheeler, our mutual friend Lisa's husband, for the past 6 months. I had photos on my phone that Jessica had sent me herself, bragging about their weekend getaways while Lisa thought Marcus was at work conferences. I had screenshots of their text exchanges, including one where Jessica laughed about Lisa being too stupid to figure it out. I knew about the credit cards Jessica had opened in her husband's name to fund her shopping addiction, the ones he didn't know about yet. Jessica had confided all of this to me because she trusted me, because I'd been her friend. Just like I had trusted her with my struggles as a single mother, my fears about money, my occasional moments of doubt about whether I was doing enough for my kids. She'd taken those vulnerabilities and twisted them into weapons. My phone was in my hand before I'd consciously decided to pick it up. Lisa's number was right there in my contacts. One call, one forwarded photo, and Jessica's perfect little world would implode. The question was, had she pushed me far enough to actually do it? I stared at my phone for what felt like hours, Lisa's contact information glowing on the screen. My thumb hovered over the call button while Emma dozed against my shoulder and Tyler continued building his elaborate block castle, blissfully unaware that our lives had just been turned upside down. The smart thing would be to put the phone down. Take the high road. Focus on proving the allegations false and getting through this nightmare with my dignity intact. But then another text came through, this one from my second job at the retail store. "Sarah, corporate called asking questions about your reliability and character. Thought you should know there's some kind of investigation happening. Call me." My hands started shaking. Both my jobs were now under scrutiny. In a town this size, word would spread like wildfire. By next week, everyone would know that Sarah Chen was being investigated by CPS, and no matter how the investigation concluded, that shadow would follow me everywhere. Jessica had to know this would happen. She was smart enough to understand exactly what she was setting in motion when she made that call. I looked out the window again and froze. Jessica was standing in her own kitchen, visible through her sliding glass door, and she was on the phone. She kept gesturing animatedly, occasionally glancing toward my building. Even from this distance, I could see she was smiling. She was talking to someone about this. Probably enjoying every moment of my humiliation. That's when I noticed Tyler had gone quiet. I looked down to find him staring up at me with those big, innocent eyes that always reminded me of his father. "Mama, why do you look angry?" I tried to soften my expression, but it was too late. He'd already seen something that worried him. "I'm not angry at you, baby. Mama's just thinking about grown-up stuff." "About those people who came here?" Emma stirred against my shoulder. She'd been pretending to sleep, but I could tell she was listening to every word. My 8-year-old was already learning to eavesdrop when she sensed adult stress, already adapting to a world where she couldn't quite trust that everything was okay. "Tyler, why don't you go wash your hands for lunch?" I suggested, needing a moment to think. As he scampered off to the bathroom, Emma sat up and looked at me with an expression far too serious for her age. "Is Mrs. Martinez still your friend?" The question caught me off guard. "Why would you ask that, sweetheart?" "Because yesterday when we were getting the mail, she looked at us really mean. And when you weren't looking, she said something to Tyler about how some kids don't have good moms." Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. It made Tyler cry after we came inside. The rage that coursed through me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Jessica had said something cruel enough to make my 5-year-old cry? She looked at my children with hatred while smiling at me like nothing was wrong? What exactly did she say, Emma? My daughter bit her lip. She said Tyler was lucky someone still wanted him, even though. She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. Even though what, baby? Even though his daddy didn't want him enough to stay. The phone in my hand felt like it was burning. Jessica had weaponized the most painful part of my children's lives, their father's abandonment, and used it to hurt my son before she'd even called CPS. This wasn't just about the money I'd refused to lend her. This was calculated cruelty. Tyler came running back from the bathroom, his hands still dripping because he never remembered to dry them completely. Mama, can we have grilled cheese? Of course we can. My voice sounded normal, but inside I was falling apart. How was I supposed to protect them from this? How was I supposed to explain that someone we trusted, someone who'd eaten dinner at our table and helped Tyler learn to ride his bike, had deliberately tried to destroy our family? My phone buzzed again. Another text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Linda Morrison from CPS. We need to schedule a follow-up interview for tomorrow afternoon. Please confirm your availability. Tomorrow. They were coming back tomorrow, which meant I had less than 24 hours before another round of questions, another violation of our privacy, another chance for them to find something, anything, they could twist into evidence against me. I looked at Jessica's contact information in my phone, then at Lisa's number right below it. One phone call could end this war before it really started. The question was whether I was ready to become the kind of person who destroyed lives, even in self-defense. I spent the rest of that day trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy for the kids, but it felt like acting in a play where I'd forgotten all my lines. Every mundane task, making lunch, helping Tyler with his puzzle, braiding Emma's hair, carried this underlying current of dread. Around 3 o'clock, my phone rang. The caller ID made my stomach lurch. Lincoln Elementary School. Miss Chen? This is Principal Martinez, no relation to your neighbor, she added quickly, and I realized word was already spreading. I need to inform you that CPS investigators interviewed Emma's teacher today. They also spoke with Tyler's preschool director. My legs felt weak. What did they ask? Standard questions about attendance, behavior, appearance, whether the children seemed adequately fed or showed signs of distress. Her voice was carefully neutral, but I caught something underneath. Miss Chen, I want you to know that both teachers gave glowing reports. Emma is one of our most well-adjusted students, and Tyler's teacher raved about his social development. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by a new wave of anxiety. But I'm required to tell you that the investigators asked specifically about any conversations Emma might have had about being left alone or feeling unsafe at home. They seemed to have very specific concerns, as if someone had given them detailed information about your family situation. Specific information. Jessica hadn't just called CPS with vague complaints, she'd crafted detailed lies designed to sound credible. The thought made me sick. There's something else, Principal Martinez continued. The investigator mentioned that they'd received reports about Emma exhibiting concerning behavior at school, but frankly, that doesn't match anything we've observed. Emma's teacher was quite confused by the allegation. What kind of concerning behavior were they told about? Hoarding food, being possessive of her belongings, talking about mommy being gone too much. None of which we've seen. She paused. Ms. Chen, in my experience, when allegations are this specific but completely inconsistent with reality, it usually means someone is deliberately providing false information. After I hung up, I stood in my kitchen shaking. Jessica had created an entire fictional narrative about my children's behavior, their emotional state, their basic needs. This wasn't a moment of vindictive anger, this was premeditated character assassination. Emma was at the dining table doing homework when she looked up and asked, Mommy, why did Mrs. Peterson seem scared when I saw her in the hallway today? Scared how, sweetheart? She looked at me like something bad had happened, and when I said hi, she just hurried away. Emma's pencil hovered over her math worksheet. She always stops to ask about my day. Mrs. Peterson was afraid to interact with my children now. The investigation was making everyone who cared about us nervous about being associated with our family. I was becoming toxic by association, and that contamination was spreading to Emma and Tyler. That evening, as I tucked Tyler into bed, he grabbed my hand with his small, warm fingers. Mama, if those people come back, should I hide my elephant? He clutched his stuffed animal tighter. Emma said they might take our toys if we're bad. My heart broke a little more. No, baby. Nobody's taking your elephant. You haven't been bad, you're the best little boy in the whole world. Then why are they being mean to us? I didn't have an answer that would make sense to a 5-year-old. How do you explain that sometimes adults hurt children to hurt other adults? That someone we trusted had decided to use him and his sister as weapons? After the kids were asleep, I found myself standing at my kitchen window again, staring across the courtyard at Jessica's apartment. Her lights were on, and I could see her moving around, probably making dinner for her own family, completely unburdened by guilt or consequence. My phone felt heavy in my hand as I scrolled to Lisa's contact. One call would change everything. But as my finger hovered over the number, I realized something that stopped me cold. Jessica's husband Carlos was at home too. I could see his silhouette in their living room. If I destroyed Jessica's marriage tonight, I wouldn't just be hurting her. Carlos would be devastated, and their 2 young kids would watch their family implode. Was I ready to traumatize innocent children to save my own? The decision was made for me the next morning when I found the letter. It was slipped under my door sometime during the night, a single sheet of paper with my name written in Jessica's distinctive handwriting. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, Emma and Tyler still asleep in their rooms. Asterisk Sarah. I heard about your little CPS visit yesterday. I hope you understand now that actions have consequences. Maybe next time you'll think twice before acting like you're better than everyone else. Some of us know what real mothering looks like, and frankly, your kids deserve better. This is just the beginning if you don't start making better choices. A concerned neighbor asterisk. The casual cruelty of it made my vision blur. She'd not only called CPS with false allegations, she was now gloating about it in writing. And worse, she was threatening that there was more to come. I read it 3 times, my anger building with each pass. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. Jessica was promising to continue her campaign of destruction against my family. My phone rang before I could fully process the implications. Unknown number. Ms. Chen? This is Detective Rodriguez with the County Sheriff's Department. We've received some additional concerns about your children's welfare, and I need to ask you a few questions. The room spun. Detective? I don't understand, CPS is already investigating. Yes, ma'am, but we've received reports that go beyond neglect. Someone called our tip line claiming you've been leaving your children alone overnight while you work additional jobs to support a gambling addiction. That's completely false. The words came out as a shout, and I heard Emma's bedroom door creak open. I lowered my voice. I don't gamble, I work 2 legitimate jobs, and my children are never alone overnight. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Can you provide documentation of your work schedules for the past month? And we'll need to verify your whereabouts on several specific dates. As he rattled off dates, I realized Jessica had been watching me more closely than I'd ever imagined. The nights I'd worked late at the diner, the weekend I'd picked up an extra retail shift, she documented everything and twisted it into evidence of abandonment and addiction. Detective Rodriguez, someone is deliberately providing false information about my family. This is harassment. That's possible, ma'am, but we're required to investigate all reports involving child welfare. I'll need you to come to the station this afternoon for a formal interview. After I hung up, Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her pajamas but wide awake. Mommy, why were you yelling? I tried to smile, but I could feel how fake it looked. Just a misunderstanding, sweetheart. Why don't you wake up Tyler and we'll make pancakes? But Emma was too smart, had inherited too much of my ability to read situations. Are we going to have to move? Move? Why would you think that? Because Mrs. Johnson in 3B moved really fast after those same people came to her house last year. And she cried a lot first, like you've been doing. I hadn't realized Emma knew about Mrs. Johnson, hadn't thought she'd connected the dots. But of course she had. Children see everything, absorb everything, understand far more than we want them to. We're not moving, Emma. This is our home. Even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. How long could I hold our life together under this sustained attack? Jessica clearly had a plan, and she was executing it systematically. The knock on the door made us both freeze. Through the peephole, I saw Linda Morrison from CPS, but this time she wasn't alone. There was a uniformed police officer with her. Mommy? Tyler's sleepy voice came from behind us. Who's here? I looked at my children, Emma with her knowing, worried eyes, Tyler clutching his elephant and trusting me to keep him safe, and realized Jessica had pushed me past the point of no return. Some wars choose you whether you want to fight them or not. I opened the door with shaking hands, Emma and Tyler pressed close behind me like they were trying to disappear into my shadow. Ms. Chen, we need to conduct an emergency welfare check, Linda said, her professional mask slipping slightly to reveal what looked like genuine concern. We've received additional reports suggesting immediate risk to the children. The police officer, his badge read Martinez, and I wondered numbly if everyone in this town shared names, stepped forward. Ma'am, we've been told the children haven't been seen in over 24 hours, and neighbors reported hearing distressed crying from your apartment late last night. That's impossible, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We've been here all evening. We ordered pizza, watched a movie. Emma, tell them about the movie we watched. But Emma had gone completely silent behind me, overwhelmed by the sight of a police officer at our door. Tyler started to cry, the soft, scared whimpering that broke my heart every time. The report came in this morning, Officer Martinez continued, checking his notes. Callers said they were concerned enough to check on the family personally, but got no answer when they knocked. I felt like I was losing my mind. Nobody knocked on our door last night. We were right here, all three of us. Linda was already moving past me into the apartment, her trained eyes searching for any signs of the distress that had supposedly been reported. She knelt down to Tyler's level, her voice gentle but probing. Hey there, sweetie. Can you tell me what you did yesterday after dinner? Tyler hiccuped, wiping his nose on his pajama sleeve. We had pizza and watched Finding Nemo, and Mommy let us stay up late because no school today. Officer Martinez made a note, and I watched his expression shift slightly. Ma'am, is today a school holiday? My stomach dropped. It's Saturday, I said slowly, realizing how this looked. The supposed concerned neighbor who had called would have known that children wouldn't be in school today, making it impossible to verify their whereabouts through official channels. The caller specifically mentioned being worried because the children weren't at their usual Saturday morning activities, Linda said. Said they always see them at the playground by 9 a.m. We don't have usual Saturday morning activities, I said, frustration bleeding into my voice. Sometimes we go to the playground, sometimes we sleep in, sometimes we run errands. There's no set schedule. But even as I explained, I could see how perfectly Jessica had crafted this latest attack. She'd created a pattern of behavior that existed only in her lies, then reported our deviation from her fictional routine as evidence of crisis. Emma finally found her voice, small and shaky. We were going to go to the playground after breakfast. Mommy promised we could feed the ducks. Linda made a note, and I wanted to scream. Even my daughter's innocent words could be twisted. Why weren't we already at the playground if I promised? Was I breaking commitments to my children? My phone buzzed with a text, and when I glanced at it, my blood turned to ice. It was from Jessica. Asterisk, hope you're having a peaceful Saturday morning with the kids. Such a beautiful day for the playground. Red heart asterisk. The timestamp showed she'd sent it 15 minutes ago, right around when she would have known CPS and police were heading to my door. She was rubbing my face in what she'd done, confident enough in her plan to mock me in real time. Ma'am, you look pale, Officer Martinez observed. Is everything all right? I stared at Jessica's text, and something inside me finally snapped into crystal clarity. She wasn't just trying to destroy my reputation or scare me into compliance. She was escalating systematically, each false report more serious than the last. This morning it was emergency welfare checks and police visits. What would next week bring? How far was she willing to go? I handed Officer Martinez my phone with Jessica's text message displayed, my hand steadier than they'd been all morning. This is from my neighbor, Jessica Martinez. She sent this 15 minutes ago, right around when you would have been dispatched to my apartment. I watched his expression change as he read the timestamp. She's also the one who asked me for money 3 times in the past 2 months, and who told my 5-year-old that his father didn't want him. Linda looked up from where she'd been examining our breakfast setup, 3 bowls, 3 spoons, a box of cereal and a carton of milk on the counter. Evidence of the normal Saturday morning Jessica had reported as suspicious absence. Ms. Chen, are you suggesting your neighbor has been filing false reports? I'm not suggesting it. I'm telling you she has been. I pulled up my call log, showing the missed calls from Jessica the day after I'd refused her loan request. She's been systematically escalating false allegations since Tuesday. First neglect, then abandonment and addiction, now emergency welfare concerns that conveniently can't be verified because it's the weekend. Officer Martinez frowned at his notepad. The caller this morning identified herself as an anonymous concerned neighbor, but she had very specific information about your family's routines. Because she lives right across the courtyard. I moved to the kitchen window and pointed to Jessica's apartment, where I could see her silhouette moving behind the curtains. She watches us constantly, documents our schedules, then twists normal single-parent life into evidence of neglect. Emma tugged on my shirt. Mommy, is that why Mrs. Martinez was taking pictures of our windows yesterday? Everyone in the room went quiet. What pictures, sweetheart? When we were doing my homework, I saw her on her balcony with her phone, taking pictures of our apartment. She was being sneaky about it. Emma pointed toward Jessica's balcony, which had a clear view of our living room. Tyler said maybe she liked our curtains. Linda and Officer Martinez exchanged a look that made my stomach clench. Ma'am, if someone has been photographing your children or your living space without permission, that changes things significantly. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jessica, *, kids seem upset today. Hope everything's okay over there. Let me know if you need anything. Smiling face with smiling eyes *. The casual gaslighting was breathtaking. She was watching CPS and police question my children while texting me offers of help. She's watching right now, I said, showing them the new message. She can see your patrol car from her window. She knows exactly what's happening. Officer Martinez stood up abruptly. I think we need to have a conversation with Ms. Martinez. Wait. Linda held up a hand. If we approach her directly and she is filing false reports, she might escalate further or destroy evidence. We need to document this pattern carefully. Tyler climbed onto my lap, still sniffling. Mama, why is the policeman here? Are we bad? No, baby. We're not bad. Someone just told some stories that weren't true, and we're helping fix it. But even as I comforted him, I was thinking about Jessica's systematic approach to this destruction. She'd started with standard neglect allegations, then moved to more serious criminal implications, and now emergency welfare checks involving police response. What came next in her escalation plan? Ms. Chen, I need you to document every interaction you've had with your neighbor over the past month, Linda said. Text messages, phone calls, in-person conversations. Everything. Officer Martinez was studying Jessica's apartment through the window. Has she ever made threats against you or the children directly? I thought about yesterday's letter, still sitting on my counter. She left a note under my door last night. Said this was just the beginning if I didn't start making better choices. That note is evidence of harassment, he said grimly. This is looking less like concerned neighbor reports and more like targeted intimidation. As they prepared to leave, Tyler asked the question that had been haunting me, Mommy, when will the scared feeling go away? I didn't have an answer, because I was starting to realize that Jessica wouldn't stop until she'd completely destroyed our lives, or until I finally fought back with everything I had. The Sunday morning calm shattered when I opened my laptop to find 17 missed emails, all from the school district's automated system. As I clicked through them, my coffee grew cold and my hands started shaking. Emma Chen marked absent Friday. Emma Chen marked absent Thursday. Emma Chen marked absent Wednesday. The emails kept coming, backdated through the entire previous week. According to the system, Emma hadn't been to school in 5 days. But she'd attended every single day. I'd walked her to the bus stop myself, packed her lunches, helped her with homework each evening. Someone had accessed the school system and falsified her attendance records. My phone rang before I could fully process what I was seeing. Principal Martinez's voice was strained when I answered. Ms. Chen, I'm calling from home because I felt this couldn't wait until Monday. Our attendance system shows Emma has been absent all week, but her teacher insists she was in class every day. There's been some kind of data breach or falsification. How is that possible? I sank into a chair, watching Emma and Tyler play quietly in the living room, completely unaware that their world was being systematically dismantled. That's what we're trying to figure out. But Sarah, there's more. Someone called the district office on Friday claiming to be you, saying Emma wouldn't be returning to school due to family circumstances and requesting immediate withdrawal paperwork. My vision blurred. I never made that call. I know you didn't. But whoever did knew Emma's student ID number, her teacher's name, and details about your work schedule that aren't public information. They were convincing enough that the office started processing withdrawal documents. Jessica. It had to be Jessica, but how had she gotten access to Emma's school records? How did she know Emma's student ID number? Principal Martinez, I need to ask you something. Have you given Emma's information to anyone recently? Any requests from neighbors or family members? A long pause. Actually, yes. About 2 weeks ago, a woman called saying she was Emma's emergency contact, asking about pickup procedures and schedule information. She said you'd asked her to help with childcare logistics. My stomach dropped. What did you tell her? Basic information, dismissal times, classroom number, attendance policies. She seemed to know Emma well, mentioned specific details about her friends and her favorite subjects. Of course Jessica knew those details. She'd been in our lives for years, had attended Emma's birthday parties, helped with school projects. I'd trusted her with everything. That woman wasn't authorized to have any of Emma's information, I said quietly. She's the one who's been filing false CPS reports against us. The silence stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Finally, oh my God, Sarah. What have I done? After I hung up, I sat staring at my laptop screen, watching Emma's fabricated absence record paint a picture of a mother who'd simply stopped sending her child to school. Combined with the CPS allegations, it created a narrative of complete parental breakdown. Tyler wandered over and climbed onto my lap, his small warm body an anchor in the chaos. Mama, why do you keep looking at that screen like it made you sad? Just some boring grown-up stuff, baby. Is it about the scared people who keep coming to our house? The scared people. That's how Tyler had categorized CPS workers, police officers, investigators, anyone whose presence made his mother tense and upset. My 5-year-old was learning to live in a world where uniformed strangers appeared at our door demanding answers to questions he didn't understand. Emma looked up from her coloring book. Tyler, they're not scared. They're trying to help. Then why does mommy cry after they leave? The innocent question hit me like a physical blow. I thought I was hiding my distress from them, but children see everything. They were learning to navigate their mother's barely controlled panic, adapting to a reality where their safety and stability were constantly questioned by authorities. My phone buzzed. Jessica again, asterisk haven't seen Emma at the bus stop lately. Hope she's not sick. School is so important. 2 hearts asterisk. She knew exactly what she'd done to Emma's records. She was watching me realize the scope of her sabotage, enjoying every moment of my growing panic. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was identity theft, fraud, systematic destruction of official records. Jessica had crossed lines that made her earlier lies seem almost innocent by comparison. As I stared at her message, one thought crystallized with perfect, terrible clarity: she wasn't going to stop until my children were taken away from me. And maybe it was time to stop pretending I could win this war by playing defense. I spent Monday morning on the phone with the school district's IT department, trying to understand how someone could have manipulated Emma's attendance records so completely. The technician's explanation made my blood run cold. The changes were made using administrative access, ma'am. Whoever did this had login credentials for our student information system. How would someone get those credentials? Either they're employed by the district, or someone with access shared their information. He paused, typing in the background. The modifications were made from an IP address registered to Martinez Communications. Does that mean anything to you? Jessica's husband Carlos worked for the local internet provider. He'd set up our building's Wi-Fi network 2 years ago, had access to everyone's connections. But more importantly, he dated the district's head secretary before marrying Jessica. Can you trace exactly when the changes were made? Thursday evening, around 11 p.m. And ma'am? This wasn't just attendance. Someone accessed your daughter's entire file, medical records, emergency contacts, disciplinary history, even her standardized test scores. After hanging up, I found myself pacing the apartment like a caged animal. Jessica hadn't just falsified records, she'd violated every piece of private information the school had about Emma. She'd seen my daughter's anxiety evaluations from last year, read the counselor's notes about how Emma worried about being a burden because we didn't have much money. Emma herself was at the kitchen table, working on makeup assignments her teacher had sent home. The irony was devastating. She was completing work for days she'd supposedly missed while I tried to prove she'd actually been there. Mommy, Mrs. Patterson wants me to write about what I did during my absence, Emma said, making air quotes with obvious confusion. But I wasn't absent. Should I write about regular school days? How do you explain to an 8-year-old that someone has rewritten her reality? That official records now claimed she'd been missing from her life when she remembered every moment of it? Just write about what you actually did those days, sweetheart. My phone rang, Linda Morrison from CPS. Ms. Chen, we have a problem. The school district contacted us about Emma's attendance irregularities. Combined with the other allegations we're investigating, this raises serious red flags about educational neglect. Those records were falsified, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm working with the school to prove it. I understand your position, but we have to respond to documented evidence. The pattern we're seeing, alleged physical neglect, supervision issues, and now educational abandonment, suggests a parent in crisis who may need intervention. Intervention. The word every parent of a CPS case dreads most. Linda, someone is systematically destroying my family with lies. The attendance records were hacked, the emergency welfare calls were false, everything you've been told is fabricated. Even if that's true, Ms. Chen, the damage is documented now. We have official school records, multiple neighbor reports, police involvement. Our job is to protect children, not determine who's telling the truth about adult conflicts. After she hung up, I sat staring at my phone, finally understanding Jessica's strategy completely. She wasn't just making false reports, she was creating an official paper trail that would stand up in court. Fake attendance records gave credibility to neglect allegations. Emergency welfare checks created police reports. Each lie built on the previous one until the fiction became indistinguishable from fact. Tyler appeared beside me, tugging on my shirt. Mama, there's a lady at the door, but she's not knocking. She's just standing there looking at our door. I moved to the peephole and felt my heart stop. Jessica was in the hallway, just standing outside my apartment with her phone in her hand. When she saw my shadow at the peephole, she smiled and held up her phone, showing me she was recording video. She mouthed words I could read through the door, say goodbye. That's when I knew she was planning something bigger than false reports. She was building evidence for the moment they took my children away. I called the police the moment Jessica walked away from my door, but Officer Martinez's response made my stomach sink. Ma'am, standing in a public hallway isn't illegal, even if it made you uncomfortable. And recording video in common areas is generally protected activity. She mouthed say goodbye at me through the door while filming. That's a threat. It's your word against hers about what she may have said. Without audio recording of an explicit threat, there's not much we can do. After I hung up, Emma appeared at my elbow. Mommy, why was Mrs. Martinez standing outside our door like that? I don't know, sweetheart. But I did know. Jessica was documenting my apartment, my children, building some kind of evidence file for whatever she was planning next. The answer came Tuesday morning when Linda Morrison arrived with 2 additional CPS workers and a woman I didn't recognize carrying an official-looking briefcase. Ms. Chen, this is Dr. Patricia Vaughn, a court-appointed child psychologist. We need to conduct emergency psychological evaluations of Emma and Tyler. My knees nearly buckled. Psychological evaluations? Based on what? Dr. Vaughn stepped forward, her voice clinical and detached. We've received reports suggesting the children are exhibiting signs of severe psychological distress, night terrors, regressive behavior, fear of abandonment, paranoid ideation about neighbors and authority figures. That's not true. They're upset because strangers keep showing up at our door asking invasive questions, but they're not. Ma'am, we have video evidence submitted by a concerned community member showing one of your children exhibiting distressed behavior in public spaces. Dr. Vaughn consulted her tablet. Specifically, footage of your son crying inconsolably while you appeared to ignore his emotional needs. Video evidence. Jessica had been filming my children, waiting for any moment of normal childhood upset to weaponize against me. Tyler cried at the grocery store last week because I wouldn't buy cookies, I said desperately. That's normal 5-year-old behavior. The footage suggests a pattern of emotional neglect, Dr. Vaughn continued. A child in distress being dismissed by a parent who appears more concerned with shopping than comforting. I remembered that grocery trip. Tyler had thrown a brief tantrum in the cereal aisle, and I'd calmly explained we couldn't buy everything he wanted while continuing to shop. Standard parenting. But through Jessica's lens and careful editing, it had become evidence of my maternal failures. Emma was hiding behind me, pressed so close I could feel her trembling. Tyler had gone completely silent, clutching his elephant with the desperate grip of a child who sensed his world crumbling. Dr. Vaughn, my children are exhibiting distress because they're being traumatized by this investigation, not because of my parenting. That's exactly what we're here to determine. She knelt down toward Emma, her voice switching to the artificially sweet tone adults use when they think children are damaged. Hi Emma, I'm Dr. Vaughn. I just want to talk with you about how things are at home. I don't want to talk to you. Emma's response was barely a whisper. Emma, sweetie, sometimes grown-ups need to ask questions to make sure kids are safe and happy. I am safe. I am happy. Emma's voice cracked. Why won't anyone believe us? Dr. Vaughn made a note on her tablet, and I watched my daughter's completely reasonable frustration being catalogued as evidence of psychological distress. Tyler, Dr. Vaughn turned to my son, who immediately buried his face against my leg. Tyler, can you tell me about your dreams? Do you have scary dreams? He nodded without looking up, and I felt the trap closing around us. Of course he was having nightmares. Uniformed strangers had been invading our home for a week, questioning whether his mother loved him enough to keep him safe. What are the scary dreams about, honey? Tyler's muffled response broke my heart, people taking me away from Mama. Dr. Vaughn's pen moved across her notepad with what felt like satisfaction. The psychological evaluation lasted 3 hours and felt like watching my children be dissected alive. Dr. Vaughn separated us into different rooms, questioning Emma and Tyler with a kind of leading questions designed to extract admissions of neglect and abuse. Through the thin walls, I could hear fragments of their conversations, Tyler's confused answers about why Mommy sometimes looked sad, Emma's attempts to defend our family that somehow sounded like confirmations of instability. When Dr. Vaughn finally emerged from Tyler's session, her expression was grim. Ms. Chen, I need to discuss some concerning responses. Tyler mentioned that you sometimes go away in your head and that he has to ask multiple times before you answer him. My stomach dropped. He's describing me concentrating while I pay bills or do paperwork. Sometimes I'm focused and don't hear him immediately. He also said you cry in the bathroom when you think he's not watching. I'm a single mother under enormous stress because someone is systematically trying to destroy my family, I snapped, then immediately regretted my tone. Everything I said was being evaluated as evidence of my stability. Dr. Vaughn made another note. Your emotional volatility is concerning, Ms. Chen. Children need consistent, calm caregivers. I wanted to scream that my volatility was the result of a week of false accusations and invasive investigations, but I forced myself to stay quiet. Jessica had created the perfect psychological trap. Any normal human response to stress became evidence of my unsuitability as a mother. Emma's evaluation was even worse. Dr. Vaughn emerged shaking her head, consulting her notes with obvious concern. Emma shows signs of parentification. She feels responsible for your emotional well-being and her brother's safety. She mentioned multiple times that she helps take care of Tyler and tries to make you less sad. She's a helpful older sister. That's normal sibling dynamics. She also described feeling afraid to leave you alone because you might disappear like Daddy did. Dr. Vaughn's voice carried the satisfaction of someone who'd found the smoking gun. That level of abandonment anxiety suggests a fundamentally insecure attachment. Of course Emma worried about abandonment. Her father had left when Tyler was a baby, and now strangers were showing up asking questions about whether her mother was fit to care for her. But in Dr. Vaughn's framework, Emma's completely rational fears became pathological symptoms requiring intervention. Doctor, my children are responding normally to an abnormal situation. Someone has been stalking us, filming us, falsifying official records. Any child would be distressed. Ms. Chen, children don't typically develop these kinds of anxieties unless there are underlying issues in the home environment. Dr. Vaughn closed her tablet with finality. I'm recommending immediate family preservation services and mandatory parenting classes. The children will remain in your custody for now, but with intensive monitoring. The words hit me like a death sentence. Family preservation services meant social workers in our home multiple times per week. Parenting classes meant officially admitting I was an inadequate mother. Intensive monitoring meant living under a microscope where every interaction with my children would be scrutinized for signs of dysfunction. After they left, Emma collapsed onto the couch like her strings had been cut. Mommy, what did I say wrong? The lady kept asking the same questions over and over until I said something she liked. Tyler climbed onto my lap, his small body shaking. Mama, I don't want to talk to any more strangers. They make my tummy hurt. As I held my children, both of us trying to pretend we weren't falling apart, I caught a glimpse of movement across the courtyard. Jessica was on her balcony with her phone again, recording our family's breakdown through the window. She'd won this round completely. In 1 week, she transformed us from a stable, loving family into a CPS case requiring professional intervention. The official record now showed neglect allegations, attendance irregularities, police welfare checks, and psychological evaluations recommending services. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. * Family Preservation Services will begin tomorrow. Please have documentation ready for home inspection. * Tomorrow. Less than 24 hours before strangers would be living in our home, monitoring how I spoke to my children, documenting every moment of frustration or exhaustion as evidence for future proceedings. I looked down at Emma and Tyler, both silent and shell-shocked, and realized Jessica's ultimate goal was becoming clear. She wasn't just trying to punish me, she was systematically building a case that would justify removing my children permanently. And she was succeeding. The family preservation worker arrived at 7 a.m. sharp Wednesday morning, just as Tyler was having his usual breakfast meltdown about the texture of his scrambled eggs. Perfect timing. I'm Monica Stevens, the woman announced, stepping into our kitchen like she owned it. I'll be conducting daily wellness checks and documenting family interactions for the next 30 days. Tyler took one look at another stranger in a professional blazer and burst into tears, throwing his plastic fork across the room. I watched Monica's pen move across her notepad before I'd even had a chance to respond to his outburst. Tyler, buddy, let's use our words instead of throwing, I said gently, crouching down to his level. No more people, he sobbed. I want all the people to go away. Monica made another note. How often does he have these emotional outbursts, Miss Chin? He's 5 years old and overwhelmed. This is the first tantrum he's had all week. But even as I said it, I realized how defensive I sounded. Everything was evidence now. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed for school, her backpack perfectly organized. She'd been getting ready earlier and earlier each morning, trying to be the perfect child who couldn't possibly justify whatever was happening to our family. Good morning, Emma, Monica said with false brightness. How did you sleep? Emma's eyes darted to me before answering. Fine, thank you. Any dreams you remember? The question made my skin crawl. This woman was interrogating my 8-year-old about her subconscious mind over breakfast. I dreamed about butterflies, Emma said carefully, and I could tell she was choosing the most innocent answer possible. Monica scribbled something down, and I wondered what pathology she was finding in butterfly dreams. The next 20 minutes felt like performing motherhood under a microscope. Monica documented how I made Tyler's lunch, noting that I let him choose between apple slices and grapes. Was that good parenting or was I being permissive? When Emma spilled orange juice on her uniform and I helped her change, Monica timed how long it took and wrote down my exact words. Emma, you have backup clothes in your room. Let's get you cleaned up. Asterisk subject responded appropriately to child's accident. Maintained calm tone asterisk. The clinical detachment in her voice made me want to scream. My phone buzzed as we were heading out the door. Jessica, of course, asterisk saw the social services car outside. So glad you're getting the help you need. The kids deserve every opportunity to thrive. Red heart asterisk. The fake concern was nauseating, but worse was the implication that she was still watching, still documenting, still feeding information to whoever would listen. Monica insisted on walking Emma to the bus stop with us, observing how I interacted with other parents and whether Emma seemed reluctant to leave me. 3 neighbors who usually said good morning suddenly found their phones fascinating when they saw the official-looking woman with the clipboard trailing behind us. Mommy, Emma whispered as the bus approached, is that lady going to be here when I get home? Probably, sweetheart. For how long? I looked at Monica's expectant face, her pen poised to document my answer. We'll figure it out, okay? Emma nodded and climbed onto the bus, but I caught her looking back through the window with an expression that belonged on a much older child, resigned acceptance of a world where privacy and normalcy no longer existed. The walk back to our building felt like a perp walk, Monica making notes about everything from my posture to how I responded to Tyler's questions about why the lady was following us. Miss Chen, I noticed Tyler seems anxious about my presence. All children are anxious around strangers documenting their every move. That level of stranger anxiety could indicate insecure attachment patterns. I stopped walking. Monica, my son is reacting normally to an abnormal situation. A week ago, our lives were completely stable. Since then, we've had multiple CPS visits, police welfare checks, psychological evaluations, and now daily monitoring. Any child would be struggling. I understand this feels intrusive, but we're here to help identify areas where the family system might be strengthened. Family system, like we were a broken appliance that needed repair rather than victims of a systematic harassment campaign. Back at the apartment, Monica settled herself at my dining table like she was planning to stay forever. I'll need to review your daily routine, documentation of Tyler's meals and activities, and any disciplinary incidents. Disciplinary incidents? The psychological evaluation noted some concerning behavioral patterns. I need to observe how you handle defiance or emotional dysregulation. Tyler, who had been playing quietly with his blocks, looked up at the word defiance like he understood he was being discussed. Tyler doesn't have behavioral problems, I said firmly. He's a normal 5-year-old processing trauma from this investigation. Monica's pen moved again. I was being documented as defensive, probably lacking insight into my child's obvious psychological distress. My phone rang, the school district again. Ms. Chen, we have another problem. Someone called this morning claiming to be from CPS, requesting all of Emma's educational records for court proceedings. They had specific case numbers and seemed legitimate, so the office released confidential information before verifying the request. My vision blurred. What kind of information? Everything. Academic records, disciplinary history, counselor notes, even the nurse's log of every time Emma visited the health office. Jessica now had access to documentation of every scraped knee, every time Emma felt sick, every casual conversation with school counselors about normal childhood worries. All of it could be twisted into evidence of neglect or emotional instability. The person who called, did they leave contact information? A callback number that goes to a disconnected voicemail. We've been had, Ms. Chen. I'm so sorry. Monica looked up from her notepad with obvious interest. Problems with the school, Ms. Chen? Someone impersonated CPS to steal my daughter's educational records. That's a serious allegation. Do you have evidence of who might do such a thing? I looked at Jessica's latest text, still glowing on my screen, and realized that even showing Monica the harassment would be spun as evidence of my paranoia and inability to maintain appropriate boundaries with neighbors. Tyler tugged on my shirt. Mama, why do you look scared again? 4 pairs of eyes, Tyler's worried ones, Monica's calculating ones, and Jessica's invisible but ever-present gaze from across the courtyard, all focused on my answer. I'm not scared, buddy. Just thinking about grown-up stuff. But that was a lie. I was terrified. Because I was finally understanding that Jessica's plan wasn't just to destroy my reputation or punish me for refusing her loans. She was systematically building a case file that would justify permanent removal of my children. And every day I spent playing defense was another day she got closer to winning. I was folding Tyler's laundry when Monica announced she needed to photograph his bedroom for documentation purposes. The clinical way she moved through my son's private space, lifting his mattress, opening dresser drawers, cataloging his toys like evidence, made my skin crawl. This stuffed animal seems quite worn, she observed, holding up Tyler's beloved elephant. How long has he been dependent on it? Dependent? The word came out sharper than I intended. He's 5. It's a comfort object. Monica made a note, probably marking my defensive tone. Everything was pathological in her world. A child's attachment to a stuffed animal became dependency. A mother's frustration became emotional volatility. My phone rang while she was measuring Tyler's closet space. The caller ID made my stomach drop. Department of Human Services emergency line. Ms. Chen? This is Supervisor Janet Walsh. We've received an urgent report that needs immediate attention. What kind of report? A community member submitted photographs showing your children in what appears to be a dangerous living situation. Specifically, images of your son playing near an open window with no safety barriers, and your daughter handling what looks like cleaning chemicals unsupervised. The room started spinning. That's impossible. I would never. The photos are timestamped from yesterday evening, Ms. Chen. We're looking at a 5-year-old leaning out a third-story window and an 8-year-old with what appears to be bleach bottles. Yesterday evening. When Tyler had been looking out our living room window at the birds, with me standing right beside him. When Emma had helped me move laundry supplies from the kitchen counter to a high shelf, away from Tyler's reach. Those photos were taken out of context, I said, watching Monica's attention sharpen at my distressed tone. Someone manipulated normal situations to look dangerous. Context or not, we have documentation of unsafe conditions. I'm sending an emergency team for another home inspection within the hour. After I hung up, Monica was staring at me with unconcealed interest. Ms. Chen, you seem quite agitated. Is there something about your home's safety conditions that concerns you? The trap was perfect. If I stayed calm, I appeared unconcerned about my children's welfare. If I showed appropriate worry, I was emotionally unstable. Jessica had engineered a situation where any response would be used against me. Someone is taking photographs of my children without permission and editing them to look dangerous. That would agitate any parent. Who would do such a thing? I pulled up Jessica's contact on my phone, showing Monica the stream of fake concerned messages. My neighbor has been systematically harassing my family since I refused to lend her money. Monica studied the texts, her expression unreadable. These messages seem supportive, Ms. Chen. This person appears concerned about your family's well-being. Of course they did. Jessica was too smart to put threats in writing. Her messages were masterpieces of plausible deniability, surface kindness hiding calculated malice. She called CPS with false allegations, falsified my daughter's school records, and now she's photographing my children through our windows. That's a serious accusation. Have you filed a police report? They said standing in public areas and taking photos isn't illegal. Monica made another note, probably marking me as paranoid and prone to blame others for systemic family dysfunction. Tyler appeared in the doorway, having heard raised voices. Mama, why are more people coming to look at our house? The innocence in his question broke something inside me. My 5-year-old had learned to expect strangers invading his home, had accepted that privacy and security were things other children got to have. Just some people who want to make sure we're safe, buddy. But we are safe, he said with the devastating logic of childhood. We're safe with you. Monica's pen moved across her notepad, documenting my son's attachment to me as if it were evidence of psychological manipulation rather than normal parent-child bonding. My phone buzzed again. Jessica, asterisk heard there might be another visit today. Kids must be so confused by all the activity. Hope everything works out for the best. Folded hands asterisk. She was watching, always documenting, always one step ahead. And suddenly I realized something that made my blood run cold. If Jessica had photos of yesterday evening, she hadn't taken them from her apartment across the courtyard. She'd been inside our building. Maybe even right outside our door. The emergency CPS team arrived 30 minutes later with a photographer and what looked like a safety inspector. As they spread through my apartment documenting every potential hazard, the kitchen knives in their locked drawer, the cleaning supplies I'd moved to high shelves, the window screens Tyler couldn't possibly reach, I finally understood Jessica's endgame. She wasn't just trying to have my children removed temporarily. She was building a case for permanent termination of my parental rights. And I was running out of time to stop her. The breaking point came at 11:47 p.m. on Thursday night. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to Tyler's peaceful breathing from his room, when I heard it, the soft scrape of something being slid under my door. Another note from Jessica, probably another veiled threat disguised as concern. But when I crept to the front door and unfolded the paper, my hand started shaking so violently I almost dropped it. It wasn't a note. It was a printed email exchange between Jessica and someone at the county courthouse, discussing expedited removal procedures and emergency custody hearings. She'd been corresponding with a family court clerk, feeding them fabricated evidence and pushing for my children to be placed in foster care while she positioned herself as a potential guardian. These poor babies need stability, she'd written. Asterisk I've been documenting the mother's deterioration for weeks. The children have expressed feeling unsafe. As their closest family friend, I'm prepared to provide emergency placement asterisk. Family friend. The woman who terrorized my 5-year-old about his father's abandonment was presenting herself as our family's salvation. But at the bottom of the email chain was something Jessica hadn't meant to include, a message from her husband Carlos expressing concern about her obsession with the neighbors and questioning why she was spending so much money on private investigation services. Private investigators. Jessica hadn't been working alone. I screenshot everything, my fingers flying across my phone. Then I opened my laptop and began typing the most important document of my life, a detailed timeline of every false report, every fabricated record, every piece of evidence I'd been gathering while trying to survive her systematic attack. But instead of sending it to CPS or the police, I did something else. I emailed it to Carlos Martinez. At 12:15 a.m., my phone rang. Sarah? This is Carlos. We need to talk. Can you meet me in the courtyard in 10 minutes? When I stepped outside, Jessica's husband was standing under the building's security light, holding a tablet and looking like he'd aged 10 years in a single evening. She hired private investigators to follow your family, he said without preamble. She spent $8,000 of our savings documenting your daily routines. She has hundreds of photos of your children. I showed him the courthouse email on my phone. She's planning to take them, Carlos. His face crumpled. I found files on her computer tonight. Photos, school records, fake CPS reports she drafted. She's been planning this for weeks, ever since she said no to the loan. He looked up at their apartment window. Sarah, my wife is sick. I don't think she's been taking her medication. Medication? Bipolar disorder. She goes off her pills sometimes, becomes convinced that everyone's against her, that she's saving people from situations only she can see. Carlos's voice broke. Last year she called animal control on 3 neighbors, convinced their pets were being abused. The year before, she reported a family to the IRS for tax fraud that didn't exist. Everything clicked into place. This wasn't just vindictive harassment, it was a psychological break that had fixated on my family. Carlos, she's destroyed my children's sense of security. They think strangers can take them away at any time. I know. And I'm going to fix this. He held up his tablet. I have everything. Her real browser history, the fake accounts she created, communications with the investigators. I'm taking this to CPS first thing in the morning. The next morning, Linda Morrison sat in my living room with a thick file folder and an expression of barely controlled anger. Ms. Chen, we owe you an apology. We've discovered extensive evidence of false reporting and document manipulation. Mrs. Martinez has been charged with harassment, fraud, and filing false reports. All allegations against you are being dismissed. Tyler was on my lap, finally relaxed enough to eat breakfast without jumping at every sound. Emma was getting ready for school like a normal child instead of a defendant preparing for trial. What happens now? I asked. The family preservation services are terminated immediately. Mrs. Martinez is required to have no contact with your family and is receiving court-ordered psychological evaluation. Linda closed the folder with finality. Your children are safe, Ms. Chen. They were always safe. As she left, I saw Jessica being escorted from her apartment by 2 police officers, Carlos following behind with suitcases and their own children. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, more lost than malicious. Our eyes met across the courtyard, and for just a moment, I felt something unexpected, pity. But then Tyler asked if we could finally go to the playground, and Emma wondered if she could invite friends over again, and I realized Jessica's greatest failure wasn't in trying to destroy us. It was in not understanding that love doesn't break that easily. We were still a family. We were still whole. And we were finally, truly free.